This story is inspired by true events, based on the human capacity to care. The bell above the diner door rattled like it was tired of surviving. A man in a gray coat stepped in, soaked from the midnight rain, collar turned up, hat pulled low. He moved slowly, not from weakness but from a kind of quiet certainty, the kind that unsettles people who mistake silence for submission. He carried no phone, no briefcase, just a folded map and an old leather wallet that looked too worn to belong to someone important. But his eyes, calm, searching, unreadable, told another story. The waitress froze when she saw him. The manager squinted. No one knew that the stranger dripping on the linoleum floor was the CEO of one of the largest investment firms in the country. Tonight, he wasn't here for food. He was here for the truth. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and quiet disappointment. Neon light flickered against chrome edges, painting everything in shades of tired blue. The clock above the counter was 5 minutes slow, just like everyone working here. It was a kind of place where dreams didn't visit anymore, only bills, bad coffee, and broken promises. Kitchen closes in 10, barked a voice from the back. The manager, a thick-necked man with a slick smile, didn't even look up from his phone. His name tag read Marty, but the way he spoke made it sound like master. He ruled the diner like it was a kingdom of crumbs. Waitresses flinched when he walked past. The young dishwasher avoided eye contact altogether. "Just coffee," the man in the gray coat said quietly, sliding onto a cracked stool. "Yeah." Marty leaned over the counter, squinting. "You got cash?" The man nodded, pulled out a few folded bills. They were old, crisp, but old, like something you'd keep for memory, not money. Marty smirked. "All right, old-timer. 1 coffee. No refills unless you tip." He turned to the waitress. "Hey, Grace, 1 black for our rain-soaked philosopher over here." Grace hesitated. Her hands trembled as she reached for the pot. She was in her 50s, maybe older, the kind of woman who'd carried more people's pain than her own. The lines on her face weren't from age. They were from holding back tears too often. She poured carefully, sliding the mug toward him. "Thank you," the man said softly. She met his eyes, just for a second, and something in her stopped. Kindness, recognition, something that didn't belong in this hour or this place. Marty saw it, didn't like it. "Grace," he snapped, "we don't got time for charity hour. Table 3's been waiting for ketchup since the Stone Age." Grace flinched, mumbling an apology as she hurried away. The man in gray stirred his coffee slowly, though it didn't need stirring. The spoon clinked softly, a small, steady rhythm in a room full of noise that pretended to be silence. He watched. The teenage busbar was scrubbing tables with a rag that used to be white. The truckers are arguing about gas prices. A flicker in the lights every time the fridge kicked in. It was all data to him, human data. The real kind. A woman at the booth near the window was crying quietly into her fries. No one asked why. The man with the mop just turned up the radio. That's what this place was, a museum of ignored people. And he'd come to see who noticed. The front door slammed open again. A tall man in a reflective jacket stumped in, the local night security guard. Or at least, that's what the patch said. He wasn't on duty. He was off the clock and full of cheap anger. "Yo, Marty," he grinned, "you got my pie left." "Only for my favorite officer." Marty laughed, slapping him on the shoulder. "You're lucky. Grace saved you a slice." "Yeah, she's better," the guard said, tossing his hat on the counter. His eyes drifted toward the man in the gray coat. "Who's that? Looks like he lost a fight with the weather." "Some stray," Marty said. "Probably can't afford more than that coffee." The guard chuckled. "Then isn't the right place. This joint's for survivors." The man in the gray coat didn't look up, just took a small sip. Grace returned with a dish rag, quietly wiping the counter beside him. "Sorry about him," she whispered. "His worse when the boss is watching." He nodded, voice gentle. "Don't apologize for other people's noise." Her hand paused mid-wipe. She studied him again, as if trying to place his face. "You talk like someone who's seen too much." He smiled faintly, maybe just enough. From the corner booth, someone laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. Marty had started another story about lazy people and freeloaders. Every word was soaked in the bitter certainty of someone who believed power came from humiliation. The man in gray turned his mug slowly, watching the steam fade. Every time Marty spoke, Grace's shoulders shrank a little more. Every insult was a bruise that never healed. The dishwasher, a kid no older than 16, accidentally dropped a glass. It shattered. Everyone froze. Marty exploded. What the hell, Leo? You think glasses grow on trees? That's coming out of your check. I am sorry, the boy stammered. Sorry, don't pay bills. The man in the gray coat spoon stopped stirring. He looked at the boy, then at Grace, then at Marty. Something old stirred in his chest. Not anger, but the quiet ache of recognition. He'd been here before. Not in this diner, but in this dynamic. This theater of cruelty is disguised as customer service. He folded his hands. Calm. Still. Listening. Marty sneered. And you, old man, you need something else, or you just here taking up space. The man didn't answer. He simply looked up, eyes steady, voice even. No, he said, but you might. Marty blinked. What's that supposed to mean? The man just smiled. You'll find out soon enough. The clock ticked. Grace froze. And somewhere outside, a black sedan rolled to a stop under the flickering diner sign. The man in the gray coat didn't move when the sedan's headlights cut through the window. He just took another sip. The coffee had gone cold, but he didn't seem to notice. Outside, rain traced silver rivers down the glass. Inside, the air grew tighter, like the room itself knew something was about to shift. Grace refilled the sugar jars to keep her hands busy. Leo swept up the broken glass, shoulders hunched. Marty laughed too loudly at something the security guard said, the kind of laugh that tried to prove control. But control was an illusion, and illusions never last long in the face of truth. Hey, philosopher, Marty said finally, wiping his hands on a towel. You ever gonna order food, or are we running a charity tonight? The man in gray looked up. I told you, just coffee. Marty leaned in, smirking. You were right or something. You got that deep thoughts, empty pockets vibe. Grace shot him a look. Marty, come on, leave him be. Relax, Grace, he said, waving her off. Just having fun. Can't joke in your own diner anymore. It's not your diner, Leo mumbled under his breath. Marty's head snapped around. What was that? Leo froze. Nothing, so. Yeah, that's what I thought. Marty turned back toward the man. See? Kids these days. No respect for hard work. Think the world owes them something. The man in gray's voice was calm, almost too quiet. Maybe they just want to be treated like people. The diner went still. Even the radio crackles seemed to fade. Marty chuckled. What are you, a social worker now? The man shrugged. No, just someone who remembers when decency didn't need a title. The security guard snorted. Big talk for a guy who can't afford a sandwich. Grace flinched. That's enough. But Marty grinned wider. Nah, let him speak. Maybe as one of those hidden geniuses. You know, the type who lectures about life from bar stools. Leo dropped his broom, muttering, You don't have to be rich to be right. The guard stood. Watch it, kid. The man in gray turned slightly, voice level. He's not wrong. Something in that tone, patient but piercing, made even the guard hesitate. But pride doesn't like being corrected. You got a problem, old man. No, the man's eyes met his. But you do. The words hit like thunder in a quiet church. Grace's breath caught. Marty's smirk vanished. Even Leo froze mid-step. The man set his mug down gently. I've been watching, listening. You treat your people like furniture, useful until they squeak. You mock decency like it's a weakness. But it's not weakness that destroys places like this. He leaned forward, his voice a whisper now. It's arrogance. Marty slammed his towel on the counter. All right, you need to leave. Why? Because I said so. The man tilted his head. And who are you to decide that? I'm the manager, Marty snapped. That's a title, the man said softly. Not a right. The silence that followed was heavy, like the whole diner was holding its breath. Marty's face reddened. Leo, call the police. Tell them we got a vagrant refusing to leave. Grace stepped forward. Marty, don't. Do it. Leo's voice trembled. Sir, maybe we should just. Now. The man in gray rose slowly, pulling a few bills from his wallet and setting them beside the mug. For the coffee, he said. He looked at Grace. Thank you for your kindness. She swallowed hard. You don't have to go. I know. He smiled faintly, but sometimes leaving says more than staying. He turned toward the door, but Marty wasn't done. He grabbed the man's arm. You think you can waltz in here, act superior, and walk out like nothing happened. Grace gasped. Marty. The man didn't resist, didn't flinch, just looked down at the hand gripping him. Let go. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Marty hesitated, then laughed nervously. What? You gonna sue me? You even got a lawyer? The man's eyes were calm. Several. The guard frowned. Wait, what's that supposed to mean? The man gently straightened his sleeve where Marty had grabbed it. Nothing you'll understand yet. Grace looked from one to the other. Please, just let him leave. Marty rolled his eyes. You always take the sob story side. No wonder you're still stuck here, Grace. That one landed deep. She turned away, blinking back tears. The man in gray watched her, and something shifted in his expression. A quiet decision. He reached into his coat pocket and set a small silver pen on the counter. Engraved initials. B.R. Leo noticed it first. Sir, is that? The man raised a finger to his lips. Sure. Then he looked at Grace. When someone shows you kindness in a place that's forgotten, it deserves to be remembered. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? He smiled, not kindly, but knowingly. Keep the pen. Then he walked toward the door. Marty scoffed. Yeah, leave your trash behind. Rich boy. The man stopped mid-step, turned. His gaze sharpened. Quiet lightning. You assume wealth is loud, he said. It isn't. Real wealth doesn't need an audience, but it remembers everything. Marty laughed, but it sounded nervous now. Whatever, man, don't come back. The man opened the door. The bell jingled, and outside, under the neon hum, the black sedan door opened. A woman in a navy suit stepped out, talking into an earpiece. Grace saw it. Her heart skipped. Marty didn't. He was still talking big. The man paused on the threshold, the rain behind him like silver curtains. He turned slightly. Grace. She blinked. Yes. He nodded toward Leo. Take care of him. He's the kind of person this world needs. Then he stepped out into the rain, disappearing into the dark, his reflection vanishing beneath the puddles. Grace stood frozen, her fingers clutching the silver pen. Leo whispered, Who was that? No one answered. Outside, the sedan's headlights cut out. The diner returned to its shallow hum. The only sound left was the slow, deliberate ticking of the clock, 5 minutes behind. As always, Grace looked down at the counter, at the faint imprint his coffee cup had left. It hadn't cooled completely, and carved into the wood beneath the mug ring, so faint you'd miss it unless you looked closely, were 2 letters scratched by a pen tip. B.R. She stared. Her breath caught. Marty frowned. What is it? She didn't answer, because right then, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Only 2 words. Stay calm. And before she could look up, the black sedan's door opened again. 3 men in suits stepped out. The diner bell jingled. And everything, every word, every smake, every lie, was about to collapse. The sound of the doorbell cut through the diner like a clean blade. 3 men in dark suits stepped in, rain dripping from their coats. Their movements were quiet, efficient, and deliberate, the kind of stillness that only comes from control. They didn't look like customers. They looked like consequences. Grace's pulse stuttered. Marty straightened his tie without meaning to. The security guard's grin flickered into confusion. We're closed, Marty said, forcing a laugh. One of the men lifted his wrist, speaking softly into a small earpiece. Subject has exited perimeter, proceeding to confirm location. Marty frowned. Hey, what's going on? Who are you people? No one answered. The tallest of the three stepped forward, scanning the room with a practiced calm. He nodded once, then moved toward the booth where the man in the gray coat had been sitting. He picked up the empty coffee cup, studying the rim. Then he turned to Grace. He said gently, "Did he speak to you?" Grace blinked. "Why, yes. Just small things." "Why? Is something wrong?" He looked at her, expression unreadable. "No, everything's finally right." The shorter man tapped on a small tablet, checking data. Confirming subject, Benjamin Rhodes. Timestamp verified. We're clear. The name landed like thunder. Grace's hand went to her chest. Benjamin. Rhodes. Leo's mouth fell open. Wait, the Benjamin Rhodes? The tech investor. Marty laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. That guy's worth billions. He's not some drifter in a gray coat. The tall man's gaze hardened. He doesn't drift, sir. He observes. Marty blinked. Observes what? Integrity. The single word hit harder than a shout. Grace felt her knees weaken. She looked down at the silver pen in her hand. And her breath trembled. He left this, she whispered. The tall man nodded. He leaves something behind everywhere he goes. It's how he remembers who stood for what. Marty snorted, trying to recover control. All right, enough of the games. If that really was him, what the hell was he doing here? The man in the suit stepped closer, lowering his voice. Testing humanity. Marty blinked. Testing? But the sound of tires outside cut him off. Another car had arrived. A long, black SUV. Its door opened, and two uniformed officers stepped out. Not police. Corporate security. They entered quietly, carrying folders and sealed envelopes. Grace took a step back, confused. What's happening? The lead officer handed one envelope to Marty. Official notice. This establishment has been under evaluation for labor misconduct, health code negligence, and employee harassment. Marty's face drained. What? Effective immediately, the officer continued. Your management privileges are suspended pending review by the Rhodes Foundation Corporate Ethics Division. Grace's eyes widened. The Rhodes Foundation. The tall man nodded. Mr. Rhodes funds our investigations. He visits anonymously, sees things for himself. Marty tore open the letter with trembling hands. His voice cracked. This is insane. Who does he think he is? The officer's tone didn't change. A man who doesn't need to think he is anyone. The words echoed through the diner, filling every corner of the tired room. Leo stood frozen, broom still in hand. Grace pressed her palm against the counter, tears blurring her vision. The guard tried to speak. Hey, look, I didn't do anything. I was just joking around. But the tall man turned to him sharply. You wore a badge tonight. Not of the law, but of fear. You use it to intimidate people who can't afford to fight back. You'll be contacted for follow-up. The guard swallowed hard. You can't just... The man's stare silenced him. Marty staggered back against the counter. This can't be legal. You can't shut me down. Not shut, said the tall man. Rebuilt. Grace looked up. Rebuilt. He nodded slowly. Mr. Rhodes believes in second chances for those who understand why they need one. Marty's voice dropped to a whisper. And what if they don't? The man's eyes turned cold. Then they were replaced. Outside, lightning flashed, a hard white streak slicing through the rain. Grace's reflection shimmered in the window, small, trembling, but somehow lighter. She looked at Leo. You okay, honey? He nodded shakily. I think so. Was that really him? The billionaire? Grace smiled weakly. Does it matter? He frowned. What do you mean? She looked toward the door where the man had disappeared into the night. Kindness doesn't need a title either. The tall man overheard her. He smiled, the first real smile since he'd entered. That's exactly what he'd say. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small sealed envelope, and set it gently on the counter. For you? Grace stared. For me? Yes. Mr. Rhodes said you'd hesitate to open it. He also said you should anyway. Her fingers shook as she peeled the seal. Inside was a note, handwritten, short, elegant. Grace, in every room I enter, I listen for kindness. Tonight, it had your voice. B.R. A single folded check lay beneath it. Her eyes widened. She didn't speak. Marty saw it. What is that? Money? You think is buying forgiveness. Grace looked at him, really looked at him. Years of swallowed silence sharpened in her voice. No, Marty. His rewarding decency, something you couldn't afford if you sold this whole diner. The word silenced even the rain outside. Leo grinned, just a little. Guess kindness finally paid off. Marty slumped onto a stool, staring at the letter in his hand. For the first time, he looked small. Not angry, not loud, just empty. The tall man turned toward the door. We'll be in touch, Ms. Grace. The Rhodes Foundation will oversee the diner's transition. You will have choices to make. Grace swallowed hard. Choices. Yes, he said, whether you want to rebuild this place or run it. Her hand covered her mouth. Me? He nodded. You've already been doing the job. Now you'll just have a title to match. She blinked, stunned. I don't even know where to start. He smiled gently. Start where he did, with people. Then they left, quiet, efficient, gone. The doorbell jingled one last time. The rain softened. Grace stood there for a long moment, holding the note, the pen, and the weight of a night that had rewritten her life. Leo broke the silence. He's not coming back, is he? Grace shook her head. Not for coffee. They both looked toward the window. Outside, in the distance, the black sedan waited at a red light. Through the glass, barely visible, was the outline of the man in the gray coat, profile calm, eyes forward, as if he already knew what tomorrow would bring. The light turned green. The car slipped into the dark. But on the fogged glass of the diner window, where the condensation gathered near the words open 24 hours, a finger had drawn something simple, fleeting, but unmistakable. Be kind. Grace exhaled, smiling through her tears. Marty didn't move. He just stared at the note in her hand, and for once didn't have a thing to say. The storm had passed by morning, but the diner was still trembling from the night before. Sunlight broke through the blinds, soft, dusty, uncertain. Grace stood alone behind the counter, her apron still damp from tears that hadn't fully dried. The pen rested beside the note, both glinting under weak light. Outside, the black sedan returned. Quiet, purposeful. The door opened. He stepped back in. No hat this time. No gray coat hiding him. Just Benjamin Rhodes, the man the world knew from magazine covers and financial documentaries. The billionaire who'd once said, wealth means nothing if it never pays a moral debt. Grace froze. The diner did too. Mr. Rhodes, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Just Ben, please. The name doesn't matter as much as what it reveals. She looked down, overwhelmed. I don't even know what to say. He walked to the counter, setting a small folder on it. Then let me speak first. He opened it. Inside were photographs of the diner, the staff, timestamps, notes scribbled in tight handwriting. This place, he said quietly, was one of 30 across the country. Diners, motels, factories, and gas stations. Each one is owned by a larger chain. Each one run by managers we trusted or thought we could. Grace blinked. You were investigating them. He nodded. No cameras. No PR stunts. Just walking in like anyone else. Listening. Watching how people treat those who have nothing to give them. He paused. The results weren't hopeful. Until I met you. Grace's throat tightened. Me! You didn't know who I was, he said softly. You didn't see power. You saw a person. That's all I ever needed to remember why I started this. He turned one of the photographs toward her, a picture of her handing him the coffee, eyes gentle, tired but kind. Marty stood in the corner, silent, his face pale. Ben looked at him next. And then there's what I saw from you. Marty swallowed. Look, I didn't know. You didn't have to know, Ben said. Decency isn't something you perform for an audience. It's who you are when no one's watching. He slid another document across the counter. Labor reports, pay discrepancies, false claims. You built your comfort on other people's exhaustion. Marty's eyes dropped. I was just trying to keep the place running. Ben nodded slowly. At their expense. Silence again. Not cruel silence, the kind that holds a mirror up. Grace watched the exchange, her heart breaking and mending at the same time. Ben turned back to her. I came here to find proof of what was broken. Instead, I found a reason to fix it. He gestured toward the sign on the door. This diner will stay open, but not under exploitation. It will become a pilot site, fair wages, paid breaks, health coverage, a model for what dignity in small business can look like. Grace's eyes widened. You mean? Yes, he said. You'll manage it, properly this time. The foundation will cover everything for the first year. You just make sure kindness never runs out of coffee. Her tears came fast. I don't deserve this. He smiled gently. That's what makes you the right person for it. Leo entered quietly from the kitchen, wiping his hands. Is it true? Are you really? Ben looked at him and smiled. If I wasn't, would you treat me any differently? Leo thought for a second. No, sir. Ben nodded. Good. Then keep it that way. He turned toward the door, slipping on his coat. I have another stop to make. Grace stepped forward. Will we see you again? He paused, half smiling. If I do my job right, you won't have to. She reached out impulsively. Mr. Rhodes, Ben, why do you do this? You could live anywhere, be anyone. Why come here, of all places? He looked at her, tired eyes, full of quiet conviction. Because somewhere along the way, he said softly, the world started rewarding cruelty and calling it leadership. And I wanted to remind it what power really looks like when it kneels instead of towers. He turned to leave. Grace's voice broke the silence. Thank you. He stopped at the door, sunlight framing him like a confession. Don't thank me, he said. Just keep being proof that kindness still pays attention. He opened the door. The bell jingled once more. And as he stepped into the light, the diner, that tired, fading little place, finally felt alive. The sun rose slowly the next morning, not triumphant, but deliberate, like it knew there was still work to do. Grace unlocked the diner door just after 6. For the first time in years, she didn't dread the sound. The bell's jingle wasn't a warning anymore. It was a beginning. Leo flipped the chairs down from the tables. His movements were lighter now. No one was yelling. No one was afraid. But the peace outside was only half the story. Inside offices, courtrooms, and newsrooms, the storm had just begun. 3 days later, a headline swept across every major network. Undercover Billionaire exposes widespread labor violations in small business chain. Rhodes Foundation reveals years of abuse, unpaid overtime, and falsified health reports across 27 sites. The footage rolled quietly, grainy clips from hidden inspections, interviews with employees who'd been too scared to speak until now. One of them was Leo. His voice shook, but he didn't hide anymore. They treated us like we didn't matter. But someone finally saw us. In the background of that clip, Grace stood behind him, a hand on his shoulder. Marty's name appeared next. No mugshot, but a press statement from the chain's corporate owners confirming termination of managerial duties pending investigation. The punishment wasn't cruel. It was clean. Financial audits, labor fines, mandatory ethics retraining. Every single diner in the chain was ordered to rebuild its structure under Rhodes Foundation oversight. Ben Rhodes didn't appear in interviews. Not one. His team spoke for him, measured, precise. Mr. Rhodes believes wealth without witness is waste. He prefers to build in silence. But inside the diner, the story felt different. Grace had a new name tag now, manager. She didn't wear it proudly. She wore it humbly, like a borrowed light. The staff had changed. New cooks, new waiters. The laughter that filled the space was shy at first, then full, then real. Customers noticed. Word spread. The coffee tastes the same, one said, but the room feels different. It wasn't the walls that changed. It was the air, lighter, cleaner, like dignity had found its seat again. Marty came back once. A week after the story broke, he showed up at dawn. No swagger, no slick hair, just a man carrying the weight of recognition. Grace looked up as the doorbell jingled. He hesitated. Didn't think you'd let me in. She wiped her hands on a towel. It's still a diner, Marty. Doors for everyone. He nodded, eyes down. You don't have to say it. I was wrong. She tilted her head. Which part? All of it, he whispered. There was no anger in her, just quiet honesty. People like us don't get many chances to be kind. The world teaches us that toughness pays better. But you took that lesson too far. He exhaled. I thought power meant never being afraid. Turns out I was just afraid of being powerless. Grace nodded. Then you understand him. Marty frowned. Rhodes. She smiled softly. No, Leo. Marty blinked, and for the first time, really looked at the boy bussing tables in the back. The same kid he'd once berated for broken glass. Leo noticed him but didn't scowl. He just nodded, a small, almost forgiving nod. Marty swallowed. You think he'd ever forgive me? Grace smiled faintly. Maybe, if you stop asking for it and start owning it. He chuckled sadly. Guess that's fair. Before he left, he set an envelope on the counter. My last paycheck. I don't deserve it. Use it for the staff. Or the roof. Or whatever. Grace didn't argue. She just nodded. Take care, Marty. When he stepped out into the morning light, she saw it, the smallest trace of humility. And maybe that was its own kind of justice. Weeks passed. The Rhodes Foundation launched a new initiative, Project Dignity, a nationwide audit of small workplaces offering grant for ethical training and wage reform. Not a single press conference. No speeches. Just quiet funding. Quiet change. Every diner in the chain got the same package. Updated health plans. Paid sick leave. Anti-harassment protections. And every envelope came with a card that read, kindness doesn't need a reminder, but we'll keep sending them anyway. BR. A month later, Grace received another letter. No return address. Just her name, handwritten in steady ink. Inside, a photo, the diner at midnight, lights glowing soft through rain. Behind it, a note. People pass places every day without realizing they are walking through the stories that save them. You turned a diner into one. BR. She framed it, not for decoration, for direction. Meanwhile, Ben Rhodes kept moving. Another diner, another motel, another night pretending to be small. He wore the same coat, same quiet smile. His team followed at a distance, never interfering. They called these trips shadow audits. He called them reminders of reality. One evening, a young assistant asked him why he still did it, why a billionaire would walk into greased diners and get treated like nothing. Ben's answer was simple. Because the higher you climb, the less truth people tell you. And I can't afford to forget what honesty sounds like. The car rolled past another flickering sign. Open 24 hours. He smiled. Some places never close. Neither should our conscience. Back in Grace's diner, the ripple never stopped. She started hosting small community nights. Free meal for local drivers. Half price for students. Leo began teaching other kids how to manage shifts, how to speak up without fear. Every time someone new walked through the door, Grace smiled the same way she had that night. Tired, but true. And sometimes, when rain hit the windows just right, she could almost see him sitting there again. Gray coat, calm eyes, quiet authority that didn't need to prove itself. She'd pour a cup of coffee, set it at his old seat, and whisper for whoever's watching. Justice didn't come like thunder. It came like sunrise, slow, steady, unstoppable. The cool learned humility, the kind found strength, and the forgotten were finally seen. Across the country, other Rhodes diners began to appear. Not franchises, not brands, symbols. Each one carried the same plaque near the door, carved in brushed steel. This place runs on fairness. People started calling them the Billionaire Diners. Ben hated the name, but he smiled anyway, because behind every coffee cup, every paycheck, every human moment of decency was a seed of change. And this time, it was growing. The diner's neon sign flickered one night, not from neglect, but from new wiring. Leo looked up, laughing. Guess even the lights are learning to shine again. Grace smiled, flipping the sign from closed to open. Always, she said. That's a point. Outside, the rain began again, not as sorrow, but as renewal. Somewhere, down the empty highway, a sedan moved steadily through the storm. Inside, a man sipped his coffee from a paper cup, eyes on the horizon. He whispered, not to anyone, but to the memory of a waitress who once said thank you to a stranger. Kindness keeps the lights on. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The world, it seemed, had moved on. But inside that small diner off Route 47, change had roots. Grace still opened every morning before sunrise. The smell of coffee mingled with new paint and quiet pride. Her staff now called the place the Hearth. Not for marketing, for meaning. The walls, once covered in grease stains, now carry framed photos of staff family members. A kindness board hung near the register, handwritten notes of gratitude pinned by strangers. Thanks for listening when I couldn't afford to talk. My daughter smiled again because you did. No one announced these changes. They grew quietly, like trusting, learning how to breathe again. Leo had become shift lead, still humble, still steady. He saved up for night school, business administration. Maybe I'll manage one of these someday, he said. Grace smiled. No, Leo, you'll own one. The town changed, too. Truckers who once just stopped for fuel stayed for conversation. A local farmer donated produce weekly. You folks keep the lights on for everyone. And every month, a black car would pull into the parking lot after closing. The driver never came in, but a man in a gray coat would step out, stand by the window, and just watch. He didn't stay long. He didn't need to. Inside, Grace would see him through the glass and nod. No words, just understanding. He wasn't checking on progress. He was witnessing rebirth. Project Dignity expanded quietly across the state. No billboards, no press. Just policy, fair wages, healthcare access, worker protection grants. Every new diner added a small plaque near the counter, built on decency. And beside it, a single quote from Ben Rhodes himself. Every job is a person's heartbeat disguised as work. Treat it that way. One evening, Grace gathered her staff after closing. She looked around the room, at faces that had once flinched at footsteps, now glowing with pride. You know, she said softly, he didn't save us. We saved each other. He just reminded us how. Leo nodded. Guess kindness really does come back around. Grace smiled. It never left. We just stopped listening. They stood in silence for a moment, the kind that feels like prayer. Outside, neon lights reflected off rain-soaked asphalt. The sign flickered softly, the Hearth, open hearts, open doors. And somewhere far away, in another town with another lonely diner, a man in a torn coat stepped inside and asked for coffee. His mission continued, not as a test, but as a reminder that wealth means nothing if it forgets the worth of a soul. Night again, rain again, the same man, same coat, same quiet grace. This time, he spoke, not to an audience, but to anyone still listening. You learn a lot in places like this. How people treat you when they think you're nothing, that's the truest measure of who they are. He paused, looked out the window. A neon flicker painted his reflection in blue and gold. I used to believe success was about building more money, more reach, more control. But the real work was smaller, humbler. It was about the moments no one claps for. He reached into his coat, pulled out the same worn notebook, the one tied with twine. Pages filled with names, stories, and lessons. Grace taught me that kindness is the hardest kind of courage. Leo taught me that silence isn't safety, it's surrender. And Marty, he taught me that redemption doesn't erase a past. It redeems it. He flipped a page. Read quietly. Every empire starts with empathy. Lose that, and you lose everything. He smiled faintly, tired, peaceful. Maybe one day, we'll stop calling it charity. Maybe we'll just call it normal. When you see wrong, do you stay quiet? Or do you stand up? He took one last sip of his coffee. The bell above the door chimed softly as he rose. Because the world doesn't change when we notice the powerful. It changes when we remember the powerless. He placed a folded bill under the cup, not for the price, but for the principle. And as he stepped into the rain, his voice lingered like a benediction. Kindness isn't a luxury. It's the only currency that never loses value. Inspired by true events, based on the human capacity to care.